व्हिडिओ कॉन्फरन्सिंगच्या माध्यमातून राहुल गांधी बोलतात. आपण जाऊया थेट.
And what else would you think should be on the sort of the package that the government is thinking about? I mean, we've spoken about small and medium, we've spoken about migrant labor, about the food issue. Any other things that you feel should be on that?
I think the last piece of this is just, I think, for the people who, to get cash to people, we really need some machinery. We can't really get cash to people. And people who have the Jan Dhan accounts, they can get the money, but many people don't. And especially, migrants may not have the access to that, etc. So I think we want to also think about what happens to the substantial part of the population that doesn't have access to these things. And probably the right answer is that we should give a bunch of money available to the state governments to try out their own schemes, to be creative in reaching people who are excluded and using NGOs. I think that we have to be willing to take some amount of mistargeting, malfeasance. Some money will be stolen, but I think if we sit on our hands and say that we don't want to do anything that's going to possibly go wrong, then I think we'll make sure it goes wrong.
There is a balance between the centralization and the decentralization aspects. I mean, it's true that each state has its own nuances. Kerala is doing something completely different. Uttar Pradesh is doing something completely different. But then the central government also has a particular role that they have to play. And there's a tension I can see between these two ideas.
You're completely right that this is a tension, and clearly the migrant movement question cannot be handled by a state government. It's a little bit odd that it is being handled so much bilaterally that in a sense I feel that that's a problem, because this is a place where you don't want to decentralize because you want to actually aggregate the information. If this is a population of people who are very infected, you don't want them to be moving through the whole country. And so I feel that that's a place where we should have tested people before they're allowed to board a train or something. So that's a central question. Yeah. That's something that only a federal government can do. Is tell the government of UP that you cannot just bring your migrants home. Conversely, I think the question of how to serve migrants in Bombay City is the Maharashtra government's problem or the Bombay City municipality's problem, and you can't have the federal government resolving that. So I think that you're exactly right. But I mean, what's your thought on that? Right now, it seems like we are sort of it seems like it's something that can't possibly be resolved. In the longer run, I think we need to think of, institutions which are more robust in that way. But right now, I don't see what we can do about it.
I mean, I feel that you have to create option value. So decentralizing as much of it as possible, which they can handle at the local level, is in my view a good thing. So the tendency should be to sort of parcel out things that can be managed at the district level and at the state level. Of course, there are some things that district magistrates can't decide about airlines and about railways and stuff. So I feel that the big decisions should be national. And then even on the lockdown front, leeway should be given to the states. That is, you want to lock down, you want to understand the nature of your lockdown, you please do your lockdown. So you give option value to the state, and the state can say, okay, actually I'll do this and I won't do that. And the risk sort of comes on the state, and then they manage it better. That would be how I would think about it. But I think the current government has a slightly different view. They prefer to sort of manage and see the thing and centralize the thing. I mean, there are two perspectives. I don't necessarily think one is wrong and one is right. I veer towards the decentralization.
I think that's what I would have done, is announced a bunch of money available for proposing good schemes for reaching the poorest people, and let states innovate. I mean, this is really And I think there are good NGOs in most states who can be brought into that process, and as you say, the district magistrates often have great ideas, and we might as well benefit from all of that. So,
Are there some experiences in other countries that you found interesting?
So I'll tell you one thing that Indonesia is doing right now. Indonesia has decided that it's going to give out, cash transfers, and it's going to give it entirely through a community decision-making process. So the community is going to decide who are the people who are needy, and choose them for the transfers. And we've worked with the Indonesian government on exactly this issue many years ago, and we find that it doesn't do any worse than the centralized targeting. Is you don't get captured by special interests or anything, and in fact what you get is people make judgments about what is appropriate in a much more locally nuanced way.
In India,
so I think that's an experience we could learn from. They have very much gone in the direction of using, telling the community, here's some money, give it to the ones who are the most needy. And that's probably, and in an emergency, that's a good policy for sure, I think. Because at least the community has some information that wouldn't possibly centralize.
You would run into the sort of dominant caste problem, where the dominant caste would try and sort of shape that money flow.
Maybe, but on the other hand, you'd worry that if you in the process of trying to prevent that, I would rather put in place extra money to allow for that than to try to figure out who are the deserving people in the village. It just seems to me, I think the one that drives a bit in the direction of what I think you've been saying and the government has also been saying, which is try to widen the reach of PDS. And that's clearly right, and make them basically quasi-universal. So that's one way to avoid that. But if you want to do more than that, to get cash to people, and some people have these Jandan accounts and others don't. Some people are in NRDTA roles. That's another way to get cash to people, and some are not. Some are on the Ujjwala lists, and some are not. Once you got through those lists, you still find that there is a bunch of people, many millions, who are excluded. And how do you serve those people? And for that, it's clear that there should be some funds available to some very local authority who can identify those people and serve them. And I don't disagree with you that there might be elite capture of some form or the other. We worried about that a lot in Indonesia when we were working there. In fact, found not much evidence for it, to be honest. I think we'll have to sort of take a chance that some of this will go wrong. But I think if we don't take a chance, we'll surely get it wrong.
So be brave, basically.
Yeah.
Take few risks because we are in a bad situation.
When you're in dire straits, then I think being brave is the only option, really.
And how do you see this thing playing out, once the disease washes out 6 months from now, from the poverty aspect? There's obviously going to be a backlash, economic backlash. There's going to be bankruptcies. How do we sort of think of it in the medium term as opposed to the immediate short term?
Right, so that's sort of what we were talking about a little bit before, which is, this question of, I think, a demand shortfall. I think that's there are two concerns. One is how to avoid a chain of bankruptcies. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe writing off a lot of debt is the way to avoid that, as you had mentioned. The other one is a demand shortfall, and getting some cash into the hands of the population is the best way to kickstart the economy. The US is very aggressively doing that, and this is a Republican administration run by a bunch of financiers, in fact, and they are willing to do it where we should be willing. This is not run by like a bunch of socially minded liberals. It's run by people who used to work in the financial sector, but they've decided that just for economic survival of the economy, we need to pump money into people's hands. And I think we should take a cue from that.
this is also changing the sort of balance of power in the world to an extent. That is also pretty clear. How do you think about that?
I think that both of them are right. I'm very worried for countries like France and Italy, which especially Italy, I think had a fairly disastrous outcome, and partly that's a result of the state being not. I mean, the Italian state has been run by, really, not very, let's say, distinguished people for a while, and as a result, it's sort of the health system was on the last legs when this hit. The U.S. moving much more in a nationalist direction is extremely frightening for the world, for the rise of China being a threat, but if the US starts reacting to it, it could be extremely destabilizing threat. So I think that's something to worry about a lot.
The undercurrent is that strong leaders can take on this virus. What is being sold is that it requires one man to charge into, against the virus. That's really the problem.
So that has been disastrous, as we know. I mean, the US and Brazil are two countries which are just messing up right and left, and these are two quote-unquote strong men behaving like they pretending that they understand anything, but even what they say every day is kind of laughable. So we have this, if anybody wanted to believe in the strongman theory, this is the time to disabuse themselves.
Thank you very much. And
thank you. That was a pleasure.
Please, when you're in India, let's have a cup of tea or something.
Yes, that would be lovely.
Yeah. And regards to everyone at home.
Yes, likewise. And take care of yourself.
काँग्रेस नेते राहुल गांधी यांनी नोबेल पुरस्कार विजेते अर्थतज्ञ अभिजित बॅनर्जी यांच्यासोबत संवाद साधलेला आहे. त्याचबरोबर लॉकडाऊनमधून लवकरात लवकर सावरण्यासाठी काय उपाययोजना करायला हव्या या संदर्भात राहुल गांधी यांनी अभिजित बॅनर्जी यांच्यासोबत संवाद साधलेला आहे. संकटातून बाहेर पडल्यास केंद्राने राज्यांना निधी देखील द्यावा. त्याचबरोबर रेल्वे आणि विमानतळाबद्दलचा निर्णय हा लवकरात लवकर केंद्राने घ्यावा असं अभिजित बॅनर्जी यांनी म्हटलेलं आहे. प्रत्येकाला रेशन कार्ड दिलं तर धान्य पुरवठा करणं सोपं होऊ शकतं. तर लॉकडाऊन संदर्भातील निर्णय घेण्याचा अधिकार हा राज्यांना हवा असं या दोघांच्याही चर्चेमधून बॅनर्जी यांनी म्हटलेलं आहे.